All right.
Oh shit, my headphones still don't work.
Still not working?
Do I sound weird now?
Sounds fine.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How about now? Do I sound like I'm underwater?
It's like, it's a different sound than if you were just talking, but
How about now? Does it sound better?
now it's clear. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. That works.
All right.
Here we go.
Nice.
Kris, so you can only see the presentation, right?
Yeah.
You can't see like all of my other the chat dialogue and the.
No. Just
Okay, perfect. Cool. If you all can't tell, we're very new to Zoom. And I will constantly admit that as we proceed here.
Yeah, I also have limited experience. I've done probably just over a handful of meetings since the start of all the COVID.
Same.
Yeah.
Cool. It's 7:10, so let's get started. Thank you all for bearing with us.
Thanks for coming. Hello. Welcome.
Are you gonna let people? Sweet.
Yeah.
You'll keep letting people in.
I'll click
Awesome.
them in.
Thanks. I don't know if there's a way to like turn the waiting room function off so people can just walk in. I don't know. Anyways, hi everyone. I'm Christine. Thanks for coming to this. This was all happening because I threw out a question onto the Queen City Bicycle Club Facebook group, I think, just sort of offering my pseudo expertise. I don't think I'm an expert, but people ask me bike questions all the time. And then it kind of turned into this cool thread where people were asking all sorts of interesting questions. And then Kris commented and I was like, we should do this thing. And so here we are. So
yeah.
So thank you all for coming. And yeah, I don't know. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I saw that thread and commented in there, and have been personally trying to do some more like virtual things with Pride Rides to get people engaged, and just like still continue to like build our community on bikes in a time when we can't really get together. So this is a cool opportunity to do that and get together in the ways that we can.
Yeah, I'm never happier than when I'm riding bikes with new and old friends. So I don't know. I hope that like virtual bike events aren't our future. I hope that we have a lot of in-person events in our future. But if they're not, then I'm happy to keep organizing virtual bike events till the cows come home, because I have to talk about bikes and hang out with cool people or else I'll wither away.
Me too. If you follow like my personal Instagram, I always like in my stories, I'm like biking down the road. I'm like, hey, this is where I am. I'm biking. Come with me.
Now you're here. Sweet. This is perfect. Yeah. Cool. So we'll just introduce ourselves really quickly for anyone who doesn't know. I'm Christine. This is me. Shout out to Katie Palatucci for her photography. She came with us on a Queen City Bicycle Club ride, which is a ride that I started organizing when I worked at Old Spokes Home for a few years. it's a monthly ride for women, trans, femme identifying people, and we just kind of bike around the city, and I have a boombox. That's my boombox on the bike trailer. And yeah, just a reason to get together and celebrate riding bikes and making noise and taking up space. Like I said, I worked at Old Spokes Home for several years, and I like to bike tour, and Tender Warrior Co. is my art business practice, which pulls together jewelry making and metalsmithing and illustrating and comics and bicycles and organizing. So that's me, and that's where you can find me.
And that's me. My name's Kris. That is also at that same Queen City ride. When I first, even before I moved to Burlington, I started coming to the Queen City rides with a group of my friends from the Barrie area. We used to come up and go to each of the rides, and it was so much fun, and just kind of like do that, build that community, and have that like casual ride and play and be loud, and yeah, that was exciting. So after I moved up here, I started Pride Rides Vermont. So this last summer, I wanted to kind of build community, not just in the bike world, but specifically in like mountain biking for queer folks. So I got together with a few of my friends, and we just started also monthly rides, and we would go to different trailheads here in Chittenden County, and also down in more central Vermont, Barrie area, and just sort of get together, build that community, and like provide some better access to queer folks in the broader mountain bike community. Yeah. So this is all my information. You can find me all there with the Pride rides. Yeah. And when we can get together again, I'll be resuming the monthly rides.
I need to go on one. I haven't been on one.
You should.
And yeah, you've done rides at, can you listen? Millstone?
Yeah. Millstone, pretty much all the Fellowship of the Wheels, so like Sunny Hollow, Saxon, Catamount Trails. We went over to Katy Hill and Stowe. We went down to Little River and Waterbury.
And these are these all VMBA networks, Vermont Mountain Bike Association networks?
Yep,
and are you also on the board of VMBA?
I just was voted onto the board like this last week, actually. So I joined VMBA doing like stuff with their diversity committee last year, and I've been just like a VMBA member, and I'm also on the Millstone Trails board, and I've been on that for a couple of years. Yeah, I just
awesome.
Like staying involved.
That's great. VMBA's great. Big fan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good.
Cool. Well, let's get into it, eh? Social distance riding. Yeah. So this whole thing came about because I sort of, I said, if anybody needs bike advice, let me know. I'm happy to like get people, comfortable on their bikes or whatever. And so a bunch of people asked questions, which we'll get to, but I also wanted to start off this presentation by addressing some of the most commonly asked questions of our time. So questions focused around social distancing, COVID-19, and the unique situation that people who ride bikes find themselves in this moment. So we're starting off with social distance riding best practices. Yeah, and we outline them here. So best practices for social distancing that I'm practicing, I'm mostly riding alone or with people that I live with. Certainly when I'm riding, I'm maintaining 6 feet of distance from people. So when you're just riding like in the position that you're supposed to be in the road, that's fairly easy. On trails, it's a little more difficult, which is why I bring a mask with me. And while I avoid touching anything, which when you're on a bike, you don't really need to touch anything, I still bring gloves with me. You can also bring hand sanitizer. And I'm avoiding really going anywhere too far away. As we were saying before we really dove in, I was saying that I have been riding a lot around town because of this. That said, I did like head a little bit out of town, and I went as far as Richmond the other day, which is about 11 miles away. But the distance I keep hearing is like try to stay 10 miles. You know, it's like a 10-mile radius from home. And then say hi to people, which I have been. It's hard not to these days. Like everyone feels desperate for connection. So every time I pass somebody, even if I'm in the middle of a street and they're on a sidewalk, it feels like we're both like, hello.
Yeah, just like waving wildly.
Yeah, you're like, human that I don't know. How are you? So those are social distance riding best practices. Kris, I want to hear what you think. And then if anybody has specific questions that these bullet points don't answer, feel free to drop them in the chat function. But how are you riding these days?
So pretty similarly, mostly by myself or with my girlfriend who I live with, or at least trying to stay away from people a little bit. I've heard some like signs about like 6 feet, and then some a little bit more depending on like respirations and all the it's like feels kind of gross when you think about it. You're like, oh, people's spit getting on me. So like maintaining that, but I don't always bring a mask, but I always wear a buff. I mean, mostly it's been cold, so it's easy to remember to put one of those on. And then recently I got these new like long sleeve shirts, and they all come with like this built-in little like face covering, which is fun. But it also feels a little weird to be like have your face covered all the time.
Yeah.
I do that. Also being sure to be self-supported. I bring everything that I need with me. Unfortunately, no like stops at coffee places or like stores or fun food places, which is really sad, and I miss Creamies already. Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that. Like I usually, sometimes I bring like a battery pack with me, and sometimes I don't care. I'm like, if my phone dies, it's fine. But I brought a few days ago when I rode onto Richmond and Heinsberg, did this big, 40-mile-ish loop. I brought my battery pack with me because I was like, if anything happens, I don't want to get in a car. I don't want to borrow a phone. I want to be able to call my partner and know that like I don't have to touch a thing. Like, so it's definitely a little bit different, but it's still possible to go on longer rides and have it be safe. And I don't think this, there's definitely a best practice that I've been seeing floating around that's like, don't ride to rural areas because you don't want to put pressure on, you don't want to transmit the virus to small rural areas, and you don't want to put pressure on a smaller medical system. I think Vermont is in so many ways is very different in that we're all kind of sharing the same medical system. Like people in Richmond are coming to UVM Medical Center, just like people in Burlington are going to UVM Medical Center. So we're a rural state ultimately, but it is our job to be responsible and make sure that when we are going on longer rides, we're not planning to stop in convenience stores. We're not stopping to use public restrooms, etc. And I think all of that is implied, but I'll just state it just in case. So bike shops. This is a really interesting situation for bike shops right now. Luckily, Kris is actually a mechanic at REI.
Yeah.
So you have some firsthand experience working at shops during this odd time, but we also took some time to look at what other shops are doing so we could let people know what to do. I mean, this is naturally a very busy time for bike shops. It's super important to support your local shop in general, but especially right now. And what's complicated about that is that just like supporting your local restaurants, it's more complicated than ever to do that. So it takes a little bit of extra effort and brain space and time to really make sure that your money is going where it should go and supporting these institutions that we hope will continue to exist after all of this is all over. So that might require more phone time or more emailing in order to get your bike serviced or buy a product. But know that it means a lot to those shops that you're spending your dollars with them. So Outdoor Gear Exchange, I couldn't figure this out, but it looks like you figured out that they're doing online sales.
I went to their website, and that's what it says on the website. Is they just opened up online sales again.
Awesome. That's great. And I know they were doing like online sales and then like local pickup. So I know that was for like gear, but I wonder if that will extend to their service department soon.
Yeah. I would think so. It seems like people are going back in that direction as we get closer to the governor's time limit for this most recent stay-at-home order, and people are, getting anxious to get back to work and also wanting to be safe. So I think that some places are still developing like best practices and ways to interact with customers without interacting too much, and that's why most of the places that are open physically have you like calling for appointments or situating a drop off where it's like no contact drop offs and pickups and stuff like that.
Right. So that's pretty much what REI has going on.
Yeah, I mean, right now I am just there building bikes to send out that have been bought online. So it's not usually all that common for bike shops to do direct to customer sales for bikes because it's such a personal process, and it's really helpful to go into a shop and talk to the person, like the mechanic, and get a good feel of your new bike or like what kind of bike you should be on and all of that. But during this time, a lot of places have started direct to consumer sales, and so people can order bikes. I'll build it and then unbuild it and then box it up and then send it out. So that is like sort of what we've been doing at REI. But next week we're looking at opening up for repair and service stuff too, in that sort of curbside, no contact, appointment only.
Cool. Yeah, I will say I've been really surprised. I just before a few hours ago, I was talking to my friend who runs Portland Gear Hub, which is a shop in Portland, Maine that does primarily used bikes, and it's kind of like a mashup of Old Spokes Home and OGE consignment section, and that they do used bikes, but they also do used gear and clothing. And they have sold over 100 used bikes online since.
Wow.
Isn't that wild?
I believe it though. People, it's like I keep hearing at like in these different meetings and whatnot that it is just record numbers of people are going outside to ride bikes or do whatever.
Right.
They're looking for new ways to keep active or to do something other than sit at home and have a million Zoom calls with their work. And so
exactly, people are looking to exercise, and they're looking to exercise in a responsible way, and cycling can provide that. Right. And then there's definitely I said to her, I was like, but bike fit is such a big issue. Like, I can't believe people are buying bikes that they haven't sat on before. And she said, yeah, but even when they sit on that, she's been running the shop for years. And she's like, even when they sit on them, they're not entirely sure if it fits or not, so people are kind of pulling the trigger and just hoping it will work out. And her staff are working really diligently to provide sizing information up front, so people are able to know, they're providing size, if you're between 5'7" and 5'10", this bike will fit. Understanding that you can swap out component. Anyways, it's been amazing that people are willing to do that and support their local shop while getting a bike that's going to enable them to get out there. And I think it's really incredible. And I haven't really seen anything locally that matches that. So Ski Rack, for example, on here is selling bikes online. They don't have a big used selection. I don't know if they have used bikes online at all, but you can buy new bikes, and then they're doing service. I wrote service, not sure. I did confirm with them via Instagram a few hours ago that they are arranging service over the phone and by email. Old Spokes Home is doing service by appointment only. You can call ahead or you can email. And then they're listing new bikes and used bikes online. And you can actually arrange test rides with them in case you don't want to make the purchase outright. But I also called them a few hours ago and confirmed that you can also not only buy bikes, but you can and get service by appointment, but you can do contactless purchase of accessories and components. So the example I asked about was handlebar tape, because we'll talk about that in a few minutes. And I was like, what if somebody wants to buy bar tape? And they said, just give us a call and we'll walk through the options. So obviously it's not the same thing as perusing in person and getting to look at all the different colors, but it seems like on the whole, shops are willing to really go above and beyond and like text you photos of their selection and work with you and provide the best possible customer service given the circumstances. So I highly encourage people. I know I'm doing the same thing with books right now. I'm like going back and forth with Crow about ordering different books, and it feels like a lot of work to get something that I could get via Amazon very quickly and cheaply, but it's worth it because I want Crow to be there when all of this is over. So yeah. In Vermont Bicycle Shop, same deal, curbside service, call or email.
And he also has a lot of, if not all of his inventory online so you can look at what's at the shop via the internet, and then do a similar thing where you can call and set up a time to pick things up or drop off a bike or things like that.
Yeah, I also want to mention Bootlegger. I've been following Bootlegger on Instagram. Bootlegger is a shop in Jeffersonville, and it seems like they've adapted fairly well to this scenario, and they're also doing a lot of online sales. So yeah,
there was another one too. I can't remember the name of it right now. I'm trying to see if I could see it real quick, but they are actually doing a virtual bike swap. So one of the big things about the COVID is that it like pretty much canceled all the local bike swaps that all these places do, and that can be a really good place to get a good bike for kind of on the cheap. So they're doing a bike swap, and I feel like it's like AJ's or something like that. I gotta look it up and we can post it later, but they are doing a bike swap, and that they're doing a thing with Stowe Trails partnership to raise money for Stowe Trails as well, which is cool.
Awesome.
I just saw that today. And yeah, Vermont Bicycle Shop is on.
Yeah, we're getting some questions in the chat function. Woo! Is Vermont Bicycle Shop in Barrie, or did I get that wrong? Oh, I can't hear you. I don't know if it's only me that can't hear you or if it's everyone. Oh, okay. It looks like people, Kris, did you like mute yourself or something? Yeah, it looks like multiple people are chiming in and saying that we can't hear you.
Yes, AJ's.
There you go. Okay, now I can hear you.
What happened? That was weird.
I don't know, because you weren't muted as far from my perspective.
And I couldn't hear you either. That was weird.
Oh, weird. Yeah, Kate mentioned that AJ Ski and Sport is running the Stowe bike swap. Do you know about that?
That's the thing that I was just talking about is AJ's, and they're doing that bike swap, and it's gonna they're gonna donate part of their sales for that to Stowe Trails partnership and building mountain bike trails in Stowe.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually never participated in any of the bike swaps, and I was trying to this year, and that's just one of the many dumb plans that was dashed by this whole situation. But that's also just another example of something that was a major boon to our local shops that is now not happening. So another reason to reach out and really go the extra mile to support those shops who have lost some significant sources of revenue. Yeah. So should we move on?
Yeah.
Cool. So we wanted to talk a little bit about trail systems and public lands and how they've been affected by this. Kris, as we mentioned, is on the board of Vermont Mountain Bike Association, otherwise known as VMBA. So do you want to talk a little bit about where you all are at?
Yeah. So things are sort of like evolving every day, and the conversation is continuing to happen about what the best plan is for mountain bike trails. So one of the main reasons that most of the trails have been closed up to this point is because of COVID. So you can't really socially distance all that well sometimes on the trails. Sometimes you can spread out enough and it's fine. Some of the trails here in Chittenden County are a little bit more popular, a little bit more populated, just like a lot more people out there. So it can be harder to avoid folks. But also the big thing was like parking lots. You can't really socially distance very well in the parking lot, and people were having trouble not hanging out afterwards, or like and that was more like in the ski season, but just like worried about that same sort of thing happening. And then the other reason was it being springtime. Or like April really is the time when all the trail networks do the biggest part of the trail work. So cleaning up the trails from the winter, like down trees and just like leaf blowing, things like that, and cleaning and clearing the trails. So that couldn't happen because of the stay-at-home order, and trail work was deemed non-essential. Thankfully, that just ended this last week, and so trail crews have been able to get out officially and start fixing up the trails and getting them ready to ride. And now it's also, it was a little rainy today, but it's generally getting drier, and the trails are getting drier, and people are getting really psyched to ride. And I think that in the coming weeks, we'll see more and more trails open up with a little bit of guidance as far as still telling people not to congregate in the parking lots afterwards, keeping your distance, riding with people you live with, still, avoiding the group thing, and trying to stay semi-local. So that back to the 10-mile thing is like, if you have to drive more than 10 miles right now, that's considered like to the extent. So you should ride trails that are local to you when they're open. And that's the thoughts at the moment.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, massive amounts of support to anyone who is in charge of making decisions about anything right now. I've seen some of the Facebook threads from VMBA, and the continual closures are making some people very upset. And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that anyone who has to decide whether something is open or closed is in a really difficult position right now, because erring on the side of caution is really like the best thing you can do, and that's not always seemingly the most rational thing to do. So just a lot of compassion to everybody involved with VMBA right now. And there's also a lot of things that are not intuitive. Like on the one hand, mountain biking is for a lot of people a very solitary activity, but on the other hand, you think about parking lots. As an organizer, you think about parking lots, but as a rider, you don't often think about parking lots and the fact that people congregate there. So it's just important to acknowledge, I think, that the people who are organizing are often the ones thinking about parking lots, whereas most people don't have to think about those things. Yeah. So thank you for doing that difficult work. Yeah, and I did a little investigating on Vermont state parks. They were closed for camping through the 15th. I think you actually added that.
Oh yeah, you can find some of this stuff is on their website. They've got like a little blog that talks about COVID updates. Yeah,
right. And we'll have that link. We'll put it in the comments of the YouTube video or whatever we post. But in the list of resources, I have that page because they're updating it. It seems like every 5 to 10 days. I did see today they updated saying that they were going to be accepting reservations for June 15th and later. So that's relevant for anybody that was hoping to do some smaller bike tours. So Underhill State Park and Little River Reservoir and all these campgrounds that you might stay at on a bike weekend, they are accepting reservations. So feel free to book
You can at least
something.
start planning, start dreaming.
Yeah, start dreaming, book it.
Mm-hmm.
And hope that works out. And then riding on Vermont and public lands have remained open for recreation. As we all know, that's an essential activity. But it's important to keep in mind when you're going on longer rides that a lot of these public lands, I know for sure I've been thinking about stuff and looking into routes and things and realizing that a lot of the restrooms that I thought of or water sources that I've used in the past are no longer available. So it's just important if you're planning to do some bike camping, which I would sort of hesitate on right now, or if you're planning to do some longer rides, that might be something to take into consideration. And it just goes back to what we said in the last slide, which is really be self-sufficient, bring everything you need. Don't plan on stopping at all for anything. Good?
It's good, yeah. It's also good practice for just any ride, really. I mean, it's something that you can carry into post-COVID stuff, is if you can carry the things that you need to be self-sufficient, then you're going to feel ultimately more prepared. And you have a pump and an extra tube and some of those things that you might not really always carry with you, because you could just hop on a bus or in an Uber or call a friend, and now you can't really do all those things, or you can at least in the safest of ways. So
right. Yeah. A big question we got was about routes. So one of the silver linings of this whole situation is that people seem to be interested in cycling because it's one of the few activities that is pretty clearly socially distancing approved. So people have been asking about local routes, and as somebody who lives in Burlington, I've been telling people that the Shared Streets Network is something to consider. So this has been happening in cities around the world. City governments and transportation departments and parks departments have been actually shutting down streets to traffic completely or enacting street calming measures in order to create more, to sort of take public space that was previously taken up by on-street parking for the most part, and make it available to people walking or on bikes. Because if you've been outside at all, you've been on the sidewalk and you've seen somebody coming and you've been getting very stressed out about what to do about it. So by removing parked cars and by diverting unnecessary traffic, our cities have made it possible for you to walk in the middle of the street. And it's kind of great. So this map here is just a screenshot. You can go to the City of Burlington's website, the Parks and Rec Department, I think is where it lives, this map and other maps. And you can see what streets they've made low traffic and what streets they've shut down to outside traffic completely. And we got a question on Facebook that was specifically 5-mile routes and under. And that's kind of a hard thing to pull off in Burlington, particularly because when people think of riding bikes in Burlington, they think of the waterfront bike path, which naturally has become very popular. So I wouldn't really suggest it at this point. But if you were to create a route between these various clusters of streets that Burlington has designated shared streets, I think that'd be a really cool ride. So you could ride up to the Old North End and connect to like the LaFountain, Rose, Manhattan, Bowles Ward area, and then take Lake Street and Battery Street down to the cluster of like the Five Sisters neighborhood, and really like carelessly ride in the middle of the street. And I think that that would be fantastic. So
yeah, that is pretty cool. And it looks like in the map they don't highlight the separated bike lanes that already exist. So there's even more to what this map, like Union here and Winooski, don't have highlights, but they do have the separated bike lanes.
Right. And it's worth mentioning Pine Street is purple. And they've in the legend, they designate a shared street with parking or lane removal. So that's the one street where they've explicitly signed that people can't park where they can usually park. And they've actually taken orange cones and created a bike lane. So that's an option. You can just ride up and down Pine Street all day.
Yeah.
If you want.
And then just like look sadly at all the things that you wish you could be doing, like looking at the art.
I could be going to Great Harvest and Resource and but it's a nice option. So for a super short ride, I would definitely look at these neighborhoods and do some nice ass slow rides around those neighborhoods. I happen to live pretty close to the Five Sisters, and I've definitely been riding my bike a bunch around there, and the streets are totally empty. It's great. I also want to suggest the Cycle the City route. So anyone who expresses interest in riding bikes in Burlington, you immediately, like, everyone's like, the bike path, the Island Line Trail, whatever you want to call it, take the bike path. Can you see my cursor?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's this trail here. Everyone knows it. Everyone's ridden it. Maybe not everyone. I shouldn't assume that, but it's very full and popular. And if you're on Facebook, there's a lot of people complaining about it right now. I don't suggest casually riding it. It's not a casual experience. I've ridden it a few times. It's a little stressful. It's full. The Cycle the City route is an awesome alternative that features some of my favorite picnic spots, views, what have you, of Burlington. It's really a feast of the best of Burlington. So it takes you through the downtown. There's actually a PDF that is it's a 10-page PDF that includes a lot of historical information, or 12-page, I have it in the slide. Historical information about the various buildings and things. There's two options. You can go down the 127 bike path, which if you haven't been it runs along the belt line, so it's not like super scenic, but it's just nice to not have to deal with cars. So you can go down the bike path, or you can go through the Intervale on the Ethan Allen Homestead, which is off-road. You can definitely do it on a skinny tired road bike. You don't need to have a mountain bike. I've done it on. You can do it, I promise. Have you ridden it, Kris?
Yeah, lots.
Yeah, it's awesome. Also, like I was saying before we kind of dove into the presentation, that this is basically the route that I've ridden like 5 times in the past 10 days. It's been spectacular, and I've been really surprised by how every time I ride it, things look a little different and I notice different things. So I've been amazed by how in the Ethan Allen Homestead I'm seeing different plants. I mean, it's the spring in Vermont, so I'm seeing different plants emerge every few days, different smells. Everything looks different. So I highly encourage people to check it out. Then you make your way up to the Ethan Allen Park, and you have the Pinnacle, which offers a spectacular view of the Adirondacks, and you have Ethan Allen Tower, which is currently closed. But even just standing at the base of Ethan Allen Tower and seeing that this crazy like brick tower exists on the top of a hill in the New North End is it's great. I'm so glad that it exists, and it's you should know it's there because it's going to be worth coming back to once it is open. It's one of my favorite places to go and drink coffee in the morning. Have you been there?
Yeah, I have. I had no idea it was there until last year when I moved here, and I thought it was so funny that 2 places in Vermont have random towers that just like look over. So in Montpelier, there's Hubbard Tower, or like
Right.
Hubbard Park, and there's the tower up top there, and it's like a similar thing. You just can go in and climb the sketchy steps and and have this like incredible view of the surrounding city. And
Yeah,
I
I
ride
can't.
bikes in Hubbard Park too, so that's
Yeah,
yeah.
I can't tell you how many people I brought to Ethan Allen Tower and they like can't believe that that place exists.
Right.
So the
Castle
fact
in the
that it's,
city.
and the pinnacle is a stone's throw away from Ethan Allen Tower, and they also can't believe that exists because it's just like you have these incredible views. It's this wide open field. It's the perfect place for social distancing because you could be there with so many other people and it wouldn't be a problem. There's a little gazebo. It's just like the most quaint spot, and so few people go there. And then this route takes you to Letty Park, through the New North End, and then down the bike path, which if you wanted to, you could avoid if it were full. Another thing, a caveat I would add to this, if you are riding down the bike path and it's full, I actually created in my Ride with GPS account a cemetery tour. I've been really into going to cemeteries lately. Because they're places that were designed for public recreation that are no longer used for public recreation because like dead people and stigma around, I don't know, dead people, I don't know. But Lakeside Cemetery is right off of the waterfront bike path. And if it's full, it's a great place to kind of like peel into and make your way up to North Ave. In fact, I think this might be the cemetery right here.
There's also a ton of like, I can't point with this, but in between that little red thing and like North Beach and even Letty Park, there's all that like, there's woodsy area on there that has different trails that people have just like made either for hiking. I'm not really personally sure of which ones are like available for biking or hiking, but people, it seems, bike all of them in my experience. And they're pretty also mild, like you could do it on a road bike. Most of it just kind of like wide or double track type stuff. But a good way to cut off. There's Arms Park, but there's also stuff behind like Burlington High School, which maybe that's Arms Park. I'm not entirely familiar with that whole entire area yet, but I know that there are like several little places where I've got to cut off the bike path and have some fun on my road bike in the woods.
Awesome. Yes, having fun on your road bike on trails that are not designed for your road bike is maybe my favorite thing. Don't underestimate your bicycle, people.
It's so true. One of the like current conversations, or at least I've seen it kind of lately, people have been talking a lot about how like modern gravel bikes, so like wider tired road bikes, are basically just the same geometry as like early mountain bikes. So it's like just as capable in that sense.
Yes.
But
your bike is probably capable of it. Yeah. And then, so this is just some non-specific local route resources. So Kris has designed some routes that are on prideridesvt.com.
Yeah, I have. So my friend Darren, who owns Vermont Bicycle Shop, hosts he created the whole website for me for prideridesvt.com off of his shop's Bicycle Adventure Club, and so it's hosted on there on prideridesvt.com, and then there's a blog that I update, and on the blog there are some posts that I made in early April about different routes in both Central Vermont and in Burlington. Connect to my personal Strava. Feel free to go on there. It's kind of a wild mess of like all of my ideas of different rides, but some of them in the ones that I posted in the blog have a pretty good description of what you'll find, what to expect, and the kind of ride it is, and maybe fun things to look for while you're out there. One of my favorite things about riding in new places on the road is just like finding the weird things that are in Vermont. So like random art installations or like llamas or just like, I don't know, there's so much out there. Every time there's always at least 6 things I want to take pictures of, which is one of the reasons I like riding alone, because then I can stop and take pictures of as many things as I want and not slow people down.
So true. I don't know. I was just looking for my my journal, because on my 40-mile ride that I did the other day, I started sketching out a bingo board for riding in Vermont in the spring. And it was like daffodils, a barn with Bernie Sanders painted on the side of it. Like there's just so much weird crap that not that daffodils are weird, but there's so much to see, like the smell of manure, llamas, whatever. There's so much.
Yeah, last week I was riding over in Heinsberg or Huntington area, and I had previously ridden by this a million times and noticed that there is a property fence, sort of like a property boundary line that somebody made out of bicycle rims, and then the fence stops, but then it continues, and what I noticed is that the continued fence is like boots, like old Blundstones, just like lined up, and continues this like weird property boundary line. So
it's great, because I actually have an old pair of Blundstones that I don't know what I'm doing with them, so I guess I'm planting plants in them. So then the next bullet, I suggest during this time, if you're somebody who is interested in riding bikes longer distances, so let's say outside of Burlington, you want some dirt road action, I suggest learning how to use Ride with GPS or Strava or Garmin. I hesitate to suggest this because honestly, I haven't really historically used any of those sites, platforms, whatever. However, I've gotten pretty into Ride with GPS over the past few months. And what's cool about these different sites is that you're able to create an account, and you're able to look at where other people near you are riding. So I've been fortunate enough to have friends that go on longer rides out of Burlington, like 30 to 60-ish miles. And I just kind of turn my brain off and follow them. But when I'm riding solo, and when I have to ride solo, that's obviously not an option. So I've been able to go onto Ride with GPS and search a certain area, and naturally cyclists gravitate towards the same kind of roads that are low traffic. Not all the time, but a lot of the time they're looking for the same things that I am. Low traffic, very scenic. And I'm able to sort of combine my memory with these routes that other people have made and sort of re-chart some nice routes. And so that was exactly what I did when I rode to Richmond and then Heinsberg and up and back the other day. Was I kind of like pieced together my memory with a pre-existing route and made something and then tested it out. And honestly, I went on a lot of roads that kind of sucked and like there was traffic and I hated them, and I came back and I looked at the route and I changed it so that the next time I go out, I'll try something different. So I think this is a good time to use some of those resources. In the resources list we'll provide, we're going to link to both prideridesvt.com, and I'm going to link to my Ride with GPS account, where I've started organizing different routes that I've created into day rides and overnights and multi-day rides and stuff, so that people can have something to work off of. And then the other suggestion is paper maps.
Yeah.
What a concept. I don't know if you use paper maps. I just pinned one to the back of my front door the other day so I could look at it.
Yeah.
And it's cool.
Yeah, there is. I could see how there'd be like something satisfying with it to kind of like go old school. But I'm like so used to now just being able to like when I design a ride, sometimes I'll use all three of those, like Ride with GPS, Strava, and some like other mapping things that are available online. And that's like the best thing about technology is you can find online every single road in Vermont, not only that exists now, but who that even used to exist in each of the little towns.
Yeah.
And so you can find these like just random places, and if you cobble them all together, you can come up with really cool stuff. So I haven't spent a lot of time with paper maps personally, but I think that would be super fun.
Yeah, Jason S. just chimed in the chat and said that Ride with GPS has an alarm that sounds off if you go off course. And that is something worth mentioning, the fact that you can select a route and then press go, essentially, and your phone will basically track you. And if you deviate from the route, it will chime so that you know and you get back on the route. This is something I don't want to go too deep into, but honestly, I'm interested in doing a whole thing around route making, if only because it's something that I'm not that good at, that I would like to get better at. And I think having to explain it might help me. But I spent a lot of time on rides looking at my phone trying to figure out where I'm at. And the truth of the matter is that the more it's like you're basically deciding one of two things. You're either going to spend a lot of your ride trying to figure out where the hell you're trying to go, or you're going to do a lot of planning. It's one of three things. Or you're just going to be really comfortable being really lost. Like that's like, those are the three options. And I enjoy all three depending on what I'm trying to accomplish. So I would love to talk more about that at some point and develop a whole presentation around route making and navigating and whatnot, because it really makes or breaks a trip a lot of the time.
Yeah. Handlebar, oh no, the sound.
Sorry. Handlebar racket. I don't know how I did that.
That was really good, like hand talking though. I was like, wait.
So when we posted this in I think it was the Queen City Bicycle Club Facebook group, this is like the most popular question. Somebody was like, I want to wrap my handlebars. And then like 8 other people were like, me too, me too, me too. Yeah. So even though it's not the easiest thing to explain via Zoom, we thought we would try.
Yes. Yeah. So we got a couple of slides that show, that illustrate the process pretty well. And
as far as where to procure handlebar tape, it's worth mentioning, like bike shops are so reliant on bike service that most small bike shops have not had to migrate to an online shopping experience at the rate that like other kinds of retail establishments have, because obviously tuning up a bike doesn't really depend on. So anyways, I feel I need to explain this before explaining why you can't really easily buy handlebar tape from your local bike shop online. They haven't made this transition. This whole COVID-19 thing is definitely, I think, putting shops in a position where they're realizing they do need to figure out how to make $15 of handlebar tape available online. I did call a couple shops, and all of them were, I specifically mentioned handlebar tape, and they said, just give us a call and we'll sell it to you over the phone. So for anyone who does need to wrap their handlebars and want to support a local shop, just call the local shop of your choice and they'll probably be able to make it work. That said, once you have the handlebar tape, what do you do, Chris?
So this is a pretty good illustration here. I also have a bike in the stand. This is my welcome to my home shop. I have a bike here, and perfect. That's like the best. It's a little bit darker than I thought, but you can see the handlebars here. These ones are already wrapped, and so I have this very nice tape to just show you over top of it the process. And we will link like a little video in the things. Another video that is by I think Global Bicycle Network, and there's a British guy that runs that show and does a good job talking about how to do this. But basically, you can see with the illustration. So another thing to note, interesting thing, is that I was actually taught the opposite way of what is on here. So the way that I wrap handlebar tape is backwards from how it's posted on a lot of the different ways. And this is the way that I do it is considered like a classic way. So instead of starting in the drops, like instead of starting down here, I actually start up top so that I end in the drops, meaning like the extra tape just like plugs in there and you don't have to have any like any electrical tape up here. So it kind of gives it like a cleaner, a little bit of a cleaner look. But so same as on there, you just start, you can start up here, up top. I don't know. Yeah, you can see that there. And one of the main things is that when you're wrapping it around, you want it to go in the direction where if you picture your hands on the bar, that if you're coming this way, it's like a throttle. You want the tape to essentially be tightening instead of loosening. So that's like a good imagery to have in your head as to make sure you're going in the right direction when you start on the bar, is just imagine sort of doing that throttle, and if the twist would be tightening, then you're good to go. Another really big key piece is to always keep like a lot of like enough tension on the tape. So you don't have to be like stretching it so that it's stretching the tape out a whole bunch, but just keeping it taut so that you can have a consistent layout across the bar. And so you just start it coming around the back like this, and then when you're coming around, how you can see on the screen, you want to cover basically like a third of the tape, and then a third each time. So you can kind of see here, you're coming around like a third there, and then keeping it tight, just continuing to wrap in that general manner all the way around.
And then as you approach the handlebar, you can see my cursor on the screen. So where your hoods, which is this part here that goes over the brake lever, which is this part, you peel back your hoods and you wrap your tape around the handlebars, and then the hood peels back over the handlebar tape. Again, this is kind of a weird thing to explain over Zoom. We have a video that we'll share in the resources that walks you through. The guy who walks you through the process has a British accent, which I'm a little bit obsessed with. I think it makes him seem very friendly and approachable, and I just want to watch the video all day long.
They do like a million how-tos on both the Global Cycling Network and the Global Mountain Bike Network, both which are European, and so they all have British accents and are enjoyable to watch and kind of funny.
Right. And I'm so glad that this is something that a lot of people are interested in, because unlike so many parts of bicycle maintenance, this is something that's actually very accessible to a lot of people, because the only tools necessary are scissors and the tape itself and electrical tape, or really any kind of tape, but electrical tape is the best kind of tape for the job. And otherwise it's all technique. And yeah, so I just want to say, like, people shouldn't, it's hard to explain over Zoom, but honestly, it's a fairly simple process. And once you understand the basic concept, it's very easy to do. So I encourage people to do this themselves. I don't think it's like mechanical things. There's a lot of mechanical stuff that I would hesitate on suggesting people do it themselves for safety reasons, but this is not one of those things. So do it yourself.
Yeah, and the good thing is like, although it's tape, it's not all, first of all, it's not always sticky, but even if it is, it's like a mild stickiness. So if you mess up, you can just unwind it and start all over again. In fact,
So
when
true.
I wrap handlebars, I do that often. I'll like not all like bunch it too close together, and then I run out of tape by the end of the bar, or like something like that. You know, so it's not like there's room for error. And
totally. Every time I've wrapped my bars, like the tape is maybe an inch thick and there's just one strip of stickiness down the middle, and I just kind of redo it over and over until it looks good to me. So you do this interesting sort of figure 8 situation around the brake lever, and then once you're past that, you continue wrapping the bars up top, and then you cut the tape here so that you have this sort of flat edge as opposed to this curve edge, and then you use the electrical tape to sort of seal it off. So like we said, we have a YouTube video. It's pretty clear.
But so the other it's super on the image, but when you're wrapping handlebar tape, you have to back the hoods up. So this is like where the hood is there. It's all if you give it a little yank towards the front of the bar, it just folds up and exposes where like the cable ends go and stuff like that. And so there's like a little bit of extra tape. Sometimes you can fold a piece of extra tape, or you can do this figure 8 pattern so that you cover any exposed area, so that when you pull the hoods back down, there's no plastic showing. It's all just the rubber from the hood and then the tape.
Right. Yeah. When you buy a package of handlebar tape, it's usually 2 rolls, and then it's 2 strips of like 6 inches of handlebar tape. And usually that handlebar tape is used to wrap around just this little bit here, because when you do the figure 8, it leaves a little tiny window that's exposed without that little strip. So anyways, a super awesome project to take on in these times when most people have a little bit of time on their hands. Feel free to reach out if you have any more questions. This is interesting. You dropped this into the slide deck, and this whole idea of it's important to replace your handlebar tape every year. This is just, and I read this and I was like, really? Because I've definitely rocked handlebar tape for a long time without replacing it.
Including myself. I mostly will replace it when it's either falling off or when I'm replacing my handlebars. Like I just swapped to a different style and had to move the same tape right over to the new bar. But so this is really about like, sometimes if you think of, especially if you're riding inside and you're like leaning over the front of your bike, you could sweat a lot onto like that area. And tape is like, some of it is silicone-y, like rubbery, the foamy type material that can soak that in. And sometimes that can get underneath. And then if you have like high content salt sweat under there, it can be corrosive. So it could, for some people, cause a safety issue. So it's good to just even unwrap, clean, and rewrap your bar, once a season or something. And that is something you can have a shop do for you if you bring it in for your yearly or seasonally maintenance. And it's a pretty quick and easy task, and just something that can kind of help keep things running well for longer.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, like I said, it's a pretty easy thing to do on your own. It's very easily accomplished by watching a YouTube video, and we'll put the link to the video that I found that I liked in the comments. But if you Google search GCN handlebar wrapping video, that's also the video. Yeah, so bike size and bike fit was another question we got. And I just want to acknowledge time because we are rambling and it's 8:15 or 8:13. So we'll try to move through things pretty quick. But bike fit is a big topic that, again, like many questions people raise, I could do a whole presentation on in of itself. But I think it's important to acknowledge that bikes were designed mostly for one kind of person, and that's like a 6 foot tall, long torsoed body person. So it requires all of us who are not that kind of body, who don't have that kind of body, to be really to listen to our bodies and to figure out if we're comfortable or not. And this is something that I've actually been thinking about a lot lately, because I'm on a bike that technically fits me, but I realized that when I'm riding, I'm really sort of thinking about it, and I feel like I'm putting a lot of weight on my hands, and I'm realizing I'm not super comfortable. So I'm starting to play with a lot of these elements. And Kris, you're a mechanic, so obviously you deal with fitting people on bikes all the time.
Yeah. So it is sort of, you're right. It's not like a one size fits all. And the other thing is, like, bikes are so different across brands or even like styles of bikes, between like a road bike or a mountain bike or a comfort bike and all of those things. And so there's so much that can go into a fit. It can be a really personalized thing. And so what we have up on the slide is sort of the general order of things, where first you would start, and I think we have a chart on the next slide about frame size, and that is like a range of height sizes and sometimes inseam sizes for like standover height. And so that number should be looked at first so that you can get a frame size that will most closely fit your body. And then from there you can customize these next pieces. So this is the chart here, and this is for road bikes. The main difference with road bikes and mountain bikes is that mountain bikes tend to just come in like extra small, medium, large, extra large, instead of centimeters or inches. They have centimeters and inches too listed under like specs and stuff, but more commonly people just say, I ride a small frame bike or something like that. Yeah. And that's where like those ranges can change a little bit. So sometimes you could be at the high end of a range, and you can consider what type of biking. Like if you're mountain biking, but your height range is within like a large frame mountain bike suggestion wise, but you're like kind of maybe towards the front of that range, you could consider a medium for like comfort and maneuverability. Sometimes a smaller bike like a slightly smaller bike, not a too small bike, can feel good when you're having to do like technical stuff. On a mountain bike, I ride like an extra small if it's available, which it's not in the current one I'm riding, so I have a small. But my road bike can be a little bit bigger because I don't have to throw it around it as much sometimes, but not as much. Anyway, so frame size, that's generally by your height, and a little bit over your inseam or standover height. And then it moves on from there. And then, so generally I've seen people talk about where then you go to seat height. So once you have the right frame size for you, you can adjust your seat so that you have the most optimal pedal stroke. And so I have my personal bike set up here too. I was going to show you, but it's like getting a little dark in here, and I'm wondering if I can give a good imagery of that.
Yeah, I can't really see your bike, to be honest. I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of dark. But anyway, I will change it up here a little bit and just kind of tell you try to create an image for you. When you're sitting on the seat of your bike, and so you can see here in this image, when you're sitting on the seat and the pedal is all the way down to the bottom like it is in the image, and your foot is on the pedal, your leg should be mostly extended but not stretched entirely. Like you should have a very slight bend in there, but not
Trying
a
to
whole
see
lot.
if there's any other photos in our presentation where we have legs.
Yeah, where someone's pedaling.
So this is like a pretty good example.
Yeah, you can see that, and I would even say so that's my partner Caroline in that picture, and her seat is a little too low in that picture. You
Yeah,
can see
yeah,
that
I would
bend is
agree.
a little bit much for
You want the bend to be slighter than this.
yes, slighter bend than that. And there are like there's charts out there too that show angles. The deeper you get into the bike fit process, which I don't typically go that deep because I don't have that much experience with it. But some people do take like master's classes and stuff for bike fit, and you can get like really dialed in with angles and cameras and all of that. But so generally the seat should be up so that when your foot is all the way down in that bottom of your pedal stroke with the slight bend. And that
Yeah, I do want to say it's another one of those things like DIY bike maintenance where some things like handlebar wrapping, I'm like, totally, if you have the right attitude, go for it yourself. And then there's also certain things where I'm like, you know what, it would really be better if you consulted a mechanic. If not, let a mechanic take the lead on this. And bike fit is one of those things where like there are people who will pay $800 to have a professional bike fit done, and it's like this boutique, it's like a wedding dress fitting or something. It's like that like level of care and pomp and circumstance. And it's worth it if you're somebody who really lives on your bicycle. And also it's completely unaffordable for some people who live on their bicycles. For what I've been really coming to realize recently is that it's a very intuitive process, and I'm not somebody who that doesn't come to me easily. Like I kind of just power through things without thinking about them, and it's only in the past 6 months or so that I've really like started listening to my body and thinking like, oh, my back aches a little more than I want it to, and my wrists hurt a little more than I want them to. And it's hard, but you kind of have to listen to your body and figure out what hurts and where and why, and then you have to work with a mechanic to figure out why. So like you were saying, I think it's there's a lot of factors. The first thing is figuring out where is it? Yeah, like making sure you have the right sized bicycle. And like the chart shows, you can figure that out. And then there's so many different things you can play with. So I have technically a bicycle that is sized correctly for me, but it doesn't feel quite right. So right now I'm playing with seat height a lot, and I'm getting a seat post, I'm getting a differently shaped seat post. So I'm actually getting one where the seat is going to be, the saddle itself will be sitting further back over here. I'm playing with a new stem. So I'm getting a stem, which is this piece that is shorter, so the handlebars will be moved back more. I always play with my saddle position. So this one is pretty level, if not pointed down a little bit. And just recently I made mine tilted up more. So if you're looking at the profile like this, it would actually go more like this as opposed to following this kind of silhouette. And then reach is just when you're sitting on your bike, how you're, like the angle of your arms, and that you can affect by playing with your stem length and the shape of you. So I actually never ride drop bars anymore. I've taken drop bars off of all my bikes, and I have either flat bars or bars that sweep back this way, because I just love being upright. So, and I want to plug, have you been on whatbars.com?
Yeah. I did a lot of research recently because I also swapped from drop bars I went to the crazy bars, they call them. So
I
it's kind
saw
of like
that. Yeah.
each bar setup, and I really like it because you still have what is like traditionally the hood's position on there available, but also you can sit more upright with like having a flat bar, and there's even like an arrow space so you can get like real arrow with it. A lot of
Right.
multiple hand positions, which is really cool. I like it because I use this particular bike for a variety of things. So it's like my commuter, it's my touring bike, it's my gravel road bike. It just does a lot of everything minus like wild downhill mountain biking. So
Right.
I needed it to have a lot of options, and that was
Mm-hmm.
a good swap to that.
Yeah, and this is another thing where like YouTube is very helpful. There's a lot of videos about bike fit out there, and I want everyone to be comfortable on their bikes, and it's very, very easy to not be comfortable on your bike. So if you have the luxury of figuring out why, I highly, please do, because bikes were not designed for most bodies that exist out there, and I think that's important to acknowledge. So I think this is a YouTube link that you found, right? Is it another? I think it's another GCN. Just
it's another GCN video.
Oh, and I
Through,
watched it.
Yeah, and it goes
It's
through
totally,
all these points, and it's like covers all those basic things that you can look at by yourself, which is good.
and it's worth noting that it's totally a skinny guy in
who's really tall and lanky, and
it's like exactly the person that bikes were designed for.
Yeah.
That is not most bodies. However, the video is really good. Even though, so most bikes weren't designed for non-athletes. Most bikes were designed for athletes. Most bikes were designed for people who prioritize speed over comfort. And that's really unfortunate. So you have to take all of that into consideration. And even though that video is made by, or features a person who encapsulates all of that, it is a good video that explains what you can do to make your bike fit better.
It's informative for sure.
Yes.
And another thing to know about that is like a good shop, and they're like a good shop will work with you to get your bike set up that fits you. If you go in and you are there to buy a brand new bike, it's going to come with a stock stem, a stock seat, a stock pedals, like all that stuff is going to, unless you like designed it from the get-go with different things, it's going to come with those stock pieces. But most shops will have different stem lengths for you to try, different seats for you to try, different like all of that stuff. They'll usually have a trainer at the shop where you can set the bike up, and you can get fitted. And sometimes that costs an extra fee, and sometimes it doesn't. It depends a little bit on like the depth of what the fit that you're going into, or the shop.
So true, yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I forgot to mention the fact that Old Spokes Home, where I used to work, one thing that they're great at is having milk crates full of parts. So stems, not that expensive. Seat posts, not that expensive. Saddles, I encourage people to spend a lot of money on them, because in my experience, the ones that you spend more money on are better. However, saddles, also not expensive. So those are three components that you can play with a lot, and not spend too much money. And you can sort of camp out at Old Spokes Home, and you can fish through their recycling bins, or their parts bins, and you can find stems that are higher or that are shorter, which is typically what you need in order to get your handlebars closer so that you're more upright, which is people usually don't need to stretch out more. They usually need to be able to sit upright more. So and then not to mention you have mechanics floating around, so you can hold up a stem that is higher and shorter. You can say, will this work? And they'll tell you whether or not it will work based on the diameter and other compatibility issues with your bike. So it's really awesome. I mean, I can't say enough how amazing it is that we have a shop like that holds on to those resources. And because most shops will throw out stuff like that all the time. Old Spokes makes a point to hold on to it so that they can sell you a $5 stem that will completely change your riding experience. Just throwing it out there.
For sure. The same thing with Vermont Bicycle Shop. I worked there before I worked at REI, and that's where I learned most of my mechanic stuff, including any of the bike fit stuff that I know. And he'll do that same thing, set you up on the trainer, swap out stems, figure out what works best for you and the bike that you're on and the style of riding that you're doing, and just get you comfortable.
Totally. Yeah, so another question we got was how to true a wheel, and we actually copied and pasted the whole question here because we thought it was important to acknowledge how specific it was, because we don't want to go too far into it, especially considering how deep into this Zoom session we are. But in this case, Emily's partner got a stick stuck in his wheel and endoed, as they say, so he went over his handlebars. And totally messed up his wheel. And truing a wheel is the act of taking a wheel which has spokes from two sides and sort of adjusting the spokes so that it comes into true. And it's a funny thing because I don't think it's like it's not complex, but it takes practice and it takes familiarity, and both of us agreed that it's sort of a difficult thing to explain over Zoom. So of course we linked to an article, and we tried to come up with a response that encouraged doing it yourself while also acknowledging that there are some things that are best left to professionals.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And or just that if you have a lot of like time and patience to learn a new skill, then you could definitely spend several hours figuring it out. And in this particular question too, it was important to note that if something like this happens, it's hard to know if your wheel could be bent or like beyond repair, sort of like beyond truing, what truing can do. Safety wise or other. So just bringing it to a shop and being like,
Kris, you seem to have frozen. But yeah, if you bring it to a shop, and it's good to bring it to a shop and determine whether or not the wheel is actually fixable. And if you do want to learn how to true it, you in theory need a truing stand, which is a very expensive bike repair tool. But you can also just put it in the frame and use the brake pads to figure out how far out of true it is. So you spin the wheel, and if it keeps hitting the pads, it needs to be straightened because it has a wobble in it. Again, it's kind of a complex process. It's up to you to decide how deep you want to go. So I believe the last question we have is about getting set up for bike packing. It looks like Kris was having audio issues. I'm assuming he is leaving and coming back. Oh, you're back. Yay.
I lost internet. I'm not sure.
Yeah, this is my favorite question. I could probably go on about it for hours, but we won't. We'll try to breeze through it. How should I set up for my first bike packing trip? What bags and racks? So my response is that, first of all, as far as bikes go, any bike is a bike packing bike if you go bike packing on it. Bike packing just means you're camping on your bike. So if you want to go bike camping, if you're doing it on your bike, you're good. You're good. That said, there are some bikes out there that make it easier and more comfortable to both carry a lot of stuff on your bike and to spend long days, full days in the saddle. But to begin, I think we agree that keeping it simple is really the way to go, both in terms of bikes, packing, racks, the whole deal.
Yeah, you can get a good feel of if you enjoy bike packing in general by just like taking a backpack, throwing it on your back, taking the bike you have, and going out there and doing it, going on a short overnight trip, and testing it out. And you can have a lot of fun doing that. But you don't need
Yeah,
to buy all of the gear all at once. Although it's tempting because there's so much gear out there.
and
And
who doesn't love spending money? But
yeah.
yeah, this photo, it's covered up by the question text, but this is from a trip that I helped organize at Old Spokes Home, where it was one of the first warm weekends in May, and we did a trip to Law Island, which is the first island off of the causeway. And you can't really see it because the text is blocking it, but this rider here is wearing a camping backpack, like a backpacking backpack, and then just has a sleeping pad and tent poles and like a dry sack of camping gear bungee corded to a rear rack. So that is not like the sexiest setup, but I'll tell you what, it got him to Law Island, like no problem. And I think that that's the coolest thing when it comes to starting out with bike packing. And it's worth noting that bike packing and bike touring and bike adventuring are all the same thing. You're just carrying stuff on your bike that you need to camp for a night or two or 30 in the wilderness / strange towns that you don't live in. So these are some photos that I included just because I thought they showcase the idea that you should just do whatever you want. The left and right photos are from the same trip as the previous one. Whoops. So same trip as this background photo. So these two photos, we were riding out to Law Island. We left from Old Spokes Home. This is my friend Andy, who's now like he bike tours all the time. I don't know what was in this case, but he brought this metal case and then like bungee strapped it, with a dry sack and his sandals. Over here, it was just like a rack filled with bags and random stuff with a net over the top. And then the one in the middle, I was in Montana a couple of years ago, and I found myself enmeshed in this group of people who were putting inflatable rafts on their bikes and biking 30 miles north of Missoula, Montana, so that they could break down their bikes, put them in the rafts, and then ride back to town. And so this was the back end of their bike where they had the paddles, a cooler, and then random gear. So it just goes to show that like you don't need all of the expensive bags. You don't need to do it a right way. As long as you can get the stuff you need to survive a night or two in the woods on your bike, you're good. And sometimes, middle photo, case in point, the more ridiculous it looks, the cooler you are.
And you'll acquire it over time if you like it, like my setup now looks much different than I did in the beginning when I first started going bike packing. I would bike pack on a fat bike, kind of like what's pictured here. These are my friends. That's my partner there. And so I started bike packing with Vermont Bicycle Shop, and VTB ADV is Vermont Bicycle Shop Adventure Club. And so we would do all sorts of bike packing to like Groton and other places like that. But so my initial setup, my friends used to pick on me all the time because I had a rack on the back of my fat bike, but I didn't have panniers at first. I just had it was a 2.5 gallon yogurt container from Cabot that I had gotten from a restaurant that I worked at, and I would put my stuff in there and then just bungee strap or tie all the rest of it on top of that or into a little front bag. And I was always continually like clanging, or all my stuff would like pop off because we like coming down the hill or something and hit a bump, and there goes my my pots or my sleeping bag or something, just like always popping up. And so they would always pick on me about that. Now I have panniers and I can put everything inside those, and they stay put a lot better. Although the other day I was commuting with my panniers and I went off a curb and my pannier popped right off my bike. So, it still can happen.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I think really like, it's like, just get out there. Just like use what you have and get out there, borrow gear if you want. All that said, I don't want to gloss over it. Like there's definitely benefits to having sexy, nice gear. The idea being that when you're on rougher terrain, the more that the weight on your bike is closer to center and lower relative to everything else, like the easier it is to handle. So this is just a photo of a more traditional bike packing setup. You can see like I have the frame bag, which puts some of the weight right in the middle. I have the seat bag, which puts the weight right under my saddle, which like, most of my weight is on the saddle. So there's reasons why it's designed that way. That said, in Vermont, like, I don't know, you can get away with riding like a really dumb road bike over a lot of our terrain, I think. So like this might make sense more out west. I don't know. That's always how I think of it. I don't know if that's necessarily correct, but you don't need like a bike packing bike out here. I think you can get away with more of like a gravel bike setup, which might be more like this, which is also kind of a traditional touring bike setup where you have some panniers either on the rear rack or up front and like maybe a handlebar bag or something. So this is more of like a bike touring setup, whereas this is more like bike packing. I don't know. To me, they're all the same. And ultimately what I am in favor of is this. Just get out with whatever you got, because it's really about having a good time.
Yeah, and getting together. I mean, like going in a group and being with your friends out in the woods or in some new random place.
Yeah, and I think it's important to take stock of what you actually have. So if you already have a rear rack on your bike, like look into panniers. You don't necessarily have to buy them, but maybe you could borrow them. I know for a while Old Spokes Home was lending them out, and it wasn't like an official thing that they did, but if you called and you inquired, like they had resources. I'm not really sure what their deal is nowadays. Personally, I love the versatility of a walled basket, which is pictured here. This photo is from a trip that I did a few years ago. It was to a camp spot that it was actually to Indian Brook, which now you can only go to as I'm asking an Essex resident, Kris.
Yeah.
Am I not allowed to camp there anymore?
You have to buy a pass. It's like $15, and they have a limited amount of passes that they give out to residents. And so it's like,
how about non-residents?
Yeah, you're not supposed to, but like I think a lot of people do go there like low key and still. And the other thing about it is it butts up to Colchester Pond. It butts up to Colchester Pond, which is a public park, so you could get lost in between.
Nice. Yeah, Indian Brook is amazing.
It's cool.
It's like 7 miles away, so it's kind of the best like sub 24-hour out and back trip. Maybe you can't do it anymore, but a few years ago I did it, and I brought this full-size bed pillow, and that's a messenger bag that has a cast iron skillet in it, and this is an oversized walled basket, and I was able to fit all sorts of dumb things in it and ride out there. So Jason S. asked, does the handlebar mounted basket affect handling? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure technically the answer is yes, but when you're only riding 7 miles away or 6 or 8 miles away, yeah, I didn't really care.
I think sometimes it can kind of help, especially if you have panniers in the back, because it makes you feel a little bit more balanced if you have some weight on each side.
Yeah.
I haven't done the basket yet, but I like one of the reasons I switched to these bars too is so I could put this walled basket on my bike.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Do a similar thing. I've had like handlebar mounted Thule bag, which is a little bit smaller, probably like the size of the messenger bag, and that has been fine. Like I've stuffed that full of stuff and haven't had a lot of issues.
Yeah, there's a lot of so the reason I like the walled basket is because you can rock it on for commuting. Like I put my city market groceries in it, I put books in it, I put my laptop in it. But then for when it's Friday night and you're trying to get out of town, I can put my bed pillow and my cast iron / actual camping gear that makes sense to take out of town in it as well. So it kind of works for all of my bicycling needs. That said, like bags, there's a lot of bags that are better designed for bike adventure, but because I'm only ever bike adventuring for a couple days at a time, for the most part, I'm happy with a walled basket because it is sort of like multifunctional and it works for me during the week as well as on the weekends. So that's where my love of the walled basket comes in. And then I also I want to say, like, don't underestimate the humble backpack. So I absolutely hate riding with anything on my back, even in town commuting. I hate it. I would much rather have a pannier or a front bag or a walled basket where I can put my stuff. I just think it's so uncomfortable. However, I've done a bunch of overnights that are so short out of Burlington, and all of them are in my Ride with GPS account, so you can check them out, that having a backpack is kind of the easiest way to go. So like bike people will tell you that that's like the worst possible option. But I think for like, if you're just like riding north on the causeway or going someplace that's like 6 to 8 miles away, who cares? Just put everything in a backpack. It's easier.
Just go for it.
Just do it. Like break the rules, Cool. So I don't know if you had anything else to add to bike packing, but it's probably a good time for us to wrap things up.
Yeah, it's endless. You could talk about all of these things. I'm surprised that they just like extended so long, all these questions, and that I still have more to say.
I know.
It would be fun to extend them each or like into longer dedicated meetings.
Yeah, so if anyone has questions, feel free to unmute yourselves and video yourselves or whatever you want to do. And of course, Kris and I are also both available to answer questions whenever, because I don't know, what is this motivation we have to like talk about bikes and get other people riding bikes? I don't know.
Because I love it. I just like want to spread that stoke to so many other people. And I mean, like biking on all levels. Like with Pride Rides, the main focus is mountain biking, but I also love bike camping and I love adventure riding to these random roads and I love commuting. I just think that bikes are fun and a good way to spend time. And I just get really excited about helping other people feel that.
Yeah, same. I just I feel like I'm so far into this and I still can't really articulate it, but yeah, I think bikes are the best. They save me from myself. Yeah, they've shown me so much of the world and they've shown me so much of myself. And saved me from a lot of anxiety and made me really fall in love with Vermont, which is definitely my chosen home. Mm-hmm. And they also seem to match the scale of humanity, I think. Like bikes move at sort of a reasonable pace. It's a little faster than walking, but it's not so fast. Yeah, I don't know. They just make sense to me. So I'm always happy to share them with people. And yeah, I would encourage people to follow up with us. We'll post this talk on, I think, YouTube. I don't know. We'll find a good place to post it, and we'll share a ton of the resources that we referred to throughout the talk so that you can check VMBA for trail closures and you can watch the handlebar wrapping video, etc. And if people have follow-ups, we're happy to do a follow-up info session or one specifically about route making, for example. And yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. Cool.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. That was
Thank
a
you
lot
very
of
much.
fun.
Very informative. Thank you.
Oh yeah. Thanks. Awesome. Well, reach out if you all have any more questions, and otherwise we're gonna head out.
Thanks so much.
All right. Bye, y'all.
Thanks.